My mom, Linda, told me flat out in my own living room, "We're not including you in Christmas this year." I fired back, "Then I'm taking my name off the mortgage." They laughed, until the eviction notice showed up at their door. I'm Ethan, 34 years old, and yes, I'm that guy who removed his name from the mortgage after my mom told me I wasn't invited to Christmas. But this didn't happen overnight. It was like a slow leak from a pipe in the ceiling that finally burst on a freezing winter night, soaking everything I thought was solid. I was always the dependable son, not the favorite, not even close, but the one they counted on. The guy who got calls when the car broke down or someone needed help with taxes. My younger brother, Jake, was the golden child who got away with everything. If I came home late, I'd get scolded. But if Jake stumbled in at 3 a.m. smelling like booze, it was boys being boys. I learned early on that I was more of a tool in the family than someone they truly cared about. After college, I landed a steady IT job and saved money. No parties, no trips, didn't even upgrade my car. I had one goal: buy a house before I turned 30. And I almost did. Here's where the real story starts. At 28, Mom called me during lunch with what she called a suggestion, which always meant she wanted something but tried to make it sound like it was for my benefit. This time, she said my stepdad Mark, and Jake found a great house but couldn't buy it without help. "It's big enough for everyone," she said, like we were some perfect family. "We can grow closer here. Plus, you'll finally have a home office. And the best part? No more rent." The house was beautiful. 2 floors, big yard, even a sunroom where I pictured books and plants. But of course, I'd be covering most of the costs. They called it a good investment for me. They promised to handle bills and groceries while I'd pay the mortgage. Jake would get a job soon, Mom said, and Mark had some work issues but they were fixing them. It felt uncertain, but I was tired of renting. Part of me hoped this was finally our chance to be a real family. So, I agreed. I put my name on the mortgage, paid the down payment, and moved in. For a little while, it seemed okay. We ate meals together, Jake acted polite, and Mom even seemed proud. I thought maybe, just maybe, things were changing. But 6 months later, the cracks appeared. Jake still had no job. He claimed he was looking, but mostly stayed up all night playing video games, blaming the system. Mark left early every day for work, but no money ever came home. Bills went unpaid, groceries ran low. When I brought it up, Mom tilted her head and said, "Well, Ethan, you have a great job. You can cover it, right?" I stayed calm, thinking it was temporary, they'd find jobs soon. I just had to wait. But I started feeling less like a family member and more like a cash machine with a place to sleep. Worse, they acted like the house was theirs. Jake had friends over all the time. Mark changed the locks without telling me. Mom rearranged my office into her reading nook and even opened my mail when I wasn't home. I was close to losing it but kept quiet. I started seeing a therapist, who advised me to set boundaries. So, I made a simple budget showing what I paid and what they owed. I asked them to chip in a few $100s a month. They acted like I'd asked for the moon. "We're family," Mom said, like that meant they didn't owe me anything. "I know," I replied. "That's why I've let it slide this long." Jake rolled his eyes, muttering that I cared too much about money. Mark didn't even join the conversation. After that, things got cold and tense. Jake barely spoke unless his internet cut out. Mom still cooked, but suddenly there wasn't enough food for me. They held private talks when I was gone. I'd come back to find furniture moved, new chores assigned, and new rules, like no shoes in the lounge. Rules that, of course, only applied to me. The breaking point came last November. I was swamped at work and really looking forward to the holidays. Some peace for once. I bought a few decorations. Just a tree, some lights, and a wreath. I set it all up while they were out. That evening, they came home and stared at the living room like I'd committed a crime. "Why didn't you ask us first?" Mom demanded, arms crossed, glaring at the tree. "I thought we were celebrating together," I said, confused. "We decided not to do Christmas," Jake said flatly. "It's a waste of money." "Mom," I said, "no one told me." "Maybe if you were around more, you'd know what's going on," she snapped. A hollow silence filled the room. I felt like I didn't belong, like I'd ruined their space with my excitement. I kept quiet. I took down the decorations and told myself not to make a fuss. Maybe next year would be better. Then this week happened. I came back from a work trip to find the living room decked out. Lights, stockings, holiday music, and laughter. I thought maybe it was a surprise for me. But then I heard Mom say, "It's so peaceful not having Ethan here to ruin everything." I froze. I stepped in. The laughter stopped. "Oh," Mom said, emotionless. "You're back earlier than we thought." "Guess I missed the memo about no Christmas again," I said calmly. She didn't blink, looked me right in the eye and said, "We're not including you in Christmas this year." Just like that. I don't know what she expected. For me to yell, cry, beg. I didn't say a word. I nodded, walked to the kitchen, opened my laptop, logged into my mortgage account, and removed myself as co-borrower. When it asked if I was sure, I clicked yes without hesitation. But that wasn't the end of the story. Not even close. Once they realized what I'd done and what it meant, the fake kindness vanished fast. That's when everything blew up. 3 days later, I was eating lunch in my workroom when my phone started buzzing non-stop. First, a text from Mom. "Ethan, what did you do to the mortgage?" Then another, all caps. "Stop being ridiculous. This isn't funny." I didn't reply right away. I just stared at the screen, my mind foggy, the words blurring together. I thought they'd notice eventually, but not this fast. I figured I had at least a few more days. Honestly, I didn't expect them to care this much. Turns out they did. Mom tried calling. I let it ring. Then she called again. I ignored it. Finally, she left a voicemail. I wasn't sure what I expected. Maybe an apology? Nope. "Ethan, this is cruel. The house belongs to all of us. You can't use it to hurt your family. I didn't raise you to be like this. Call me back." That last line, "I didn't raise you to be like this," actually made me laugh out loud. The irony was so thick you could spread it on toast. That night, when I walked in, the house felt eerily quiet. Too quiet. Usually, Jake would be yelling at his video games, and Mark would be pretending to fix something. But now, just silence. The fridge hummed softly, mixed with a burnt smell from the kitchen, probably one of Mark's failed dinner attempts. I walked in, set my keys down, kicked off my shoes, expecting a normal night. But all three of them were sitting in the living room, Mom, Mark, and Jake, lined up on the couch like a judging panel. "You have to undo what you did," Mom said, avoiding my eyes. "Hey Mom, good to be back," I said, tossing my laptop bag by the door. "Stop pretending," Jake snapped. "You messed with the house papers." "That's illegal," I raised an eyebrow. "Illegal? You mean changing the ownership on the place I paid for?" "It's not just yours," Mom hissed. "We all live here. This is our home." "You've been living rent-free," I shot back. "That's not the same thing," Mark finally spoke, quietly. "You're making a huge mistake, kid." The room went dead silent. That hit harder than I expected. Mark looked away, and Mom's expression changed. Not pain or sadness, just empty, like she'd been faking feelings for so long she forgot what real ones felt like. "After everything we gave you," she said softly, "something inside me broke open." "Oh, you mean when you tricked me into paying for your house and made me the family's punching bag? Or when you threw parties and didn't invite me even though I live here? Which giving are you talking about?" "Stop overreacting," she muttered, like that could erase the truth. I walked to the kitchen, grabbed a cold bottle of water. My hands shook slightly, not from fear, but from a sharp, steady energy. Something inside me had changed, and there was no going back. "You know," I said, leaning on the counter, "I used to think it was me, that if I worked harder, paid more, and kept quiet, I'd finally belong here." "Ethan," Mom started, her voice too sweet, too fake. But I cut her off. "You don't want a son. You want a paycheck who never asks questions. That's not me anymore." I took a sip and looked at all of them. Jake's face was red, his leg bouncing nervously. Mark was blank, like someone who's given up years ago. Mom looked like she wanted to say something cruel but couldn't find the words. So I spoke for her. "I talked to a lawyer. Since there's no lease, you have 30 days to move out." Not a word. Just silence. "You're really kicking out your own mother?" she asked, voice trembling. "After everything I've done for you? You stopped being a parent the moment you turned me into your ATM." The room held its breath, and even the couch seemed frozen in time. Then Jake jumped up, slamming his knee into the table. "This is crazy. You can't just do this." "I can," I said quietly. "And I'm going to." I turned and headed upstairs, ready to lock my door and let them deal with it. But just as I reached the top, I heard her voice again. "You think you're the good guy," she yelled, "but this won't be forgotten. Family always remembers." I paused, turned just enough so she could hear me but not see me. "Good," I said. "I hope you remember every bit." I closed my door and sat at my desk, breathing slow. The silence wasn't peaceful. It felt tight, like the sky just before a storm, because I knew this wasn't over. They were going to fight back harder than ever. The next day started with a silence that didn't feel calm. It was the kind of quiet that lingers after a big fight, where even the smallest noises sound louder than usual. I could hear someone moving downstairs, clinking plates a little too loudly, like they were trying to be passive-aggressive at breakfast. I didn't bother going down. I wasn't ready for another round, and neither were they. Not yet. That quiet was just the calm before the real storm. By evening, the real pushback began. My mom slid a handwritten letter under my bedroom door, a neat, 3-page note on fancy stationery she usually saved for birthdays. The first line read, "I'm speaking as a mother who deeply cares about her son, not someone trying to control him." The whole letter was a guilt trip. She wrote about everything she'd sacrificed for me, working 2 jobs after Dad left, never complaining, except she actually did complain. She even mentioned how I used to cry when I scraped my knee and how she was always there to comfort me. Then came the emotional weight. How painful it was to see the family falling apart. How my behavior was tearing us apart. How money had made me cold and distant. The last line hit hard. "I just want my son back. Please don't go through with this." I finished the letter with a tight feeling in my chest, not because I believed it, but because a small part of me wished it were true. That was always my mom's way. She didn't raise me with kindness. She raised me with pressure. And that kind of upbringing is hard to shake. I didn't respond. The next morning, things got worse. Mark blocked me in the hallway like some cheap security guard. "You know," he said with arms crossed, "this house isn't just yours. We've done plenty around here." I blinked. "You changed a light bulb last month." His jaw tightened. "This isn't how families act." "No," I said, stepping past him, "but it's exactly how landlords treat people who don't pay." Later, I noticed the thermostat was locked. Mom suddenly declared the upstairs bathroom off-limits. Laundry times were shuffled without a word. Childish. Immature. But it didn't stop there. That night, I found Jake in my office, using my computer like it was his. "What are you doing?" I asked, holding back the edge in my voice. He looked up slowly, like I was annoying him. "Chill out," he said. "I'm just looking. You always act like everything's yours." "It is mine," I said firmly. "Yeah," he said, standing up, voice low. "Maybe it's time you stop pretending you're better than us." I said nothing. "One day, you'll be the one begging for help. And when that day comes, I hope we remind you of this." It was laughable, me needing help from them. I wanted to laugh. Instead, I shut the door and locked it. That night, I started putting a chair under the doorknob before bed. I wish I could say it was just anxiety. But the next morning, I found scratch marks near the lock, like someone tried to force the door open. That's when I stopped playing nice. I started keeping records, taking pictures, saving messages. I installed a camera in the hallway pointed at my door. I printed the state's tenant laws, highlighted every rule that let me evict them legally. I started preparing, not just to get them out, but to leave myself. Because even after they were gone, the house would still feel heavy. Full of old fights and tension I couldn't forget. 2 days later, the last line was crossed. I came home, stepped into the kitchen, and froze. They'd raided my fridge. The shelf where I kept my food, leftovers, yogurt, my favorite Thai dishes, was completely empty, everything thrown in the trash. A note stuck to the fridge read, "Community." No name, no explanation. I didn't yell. Didn't storm the house. I went upstairs, opened my laptop, typed a formal eviction notice, printed it, and slid it under the living room door where they were watching some mindless TV show. 5 minutes later, I heard Jake yell, "What the heck is this?" I said nothing. Not then. But I knew they'd show up eventually, and they wouldn't come alone. That's when the next phase started. They brought in the extended family. The night I handed them the eviction notice, I realized peace was gone. They weren't leaving quietly. That wasn't their style. What I didn't expect was how hard they'd spin the story. It started with Karen. She called the next morning, voice dripping with fake sympathy like she'd already picked sides but was pretending not to. "Ethan, honey, I heard there's trouble at home. Your mother's really hurting," she said. "I heard you're kicking them out." I sighed. Linda and her family have lived in my house rent-free for almost 4 years. They haven't helped with anything. I'm just asking them to step up. She paused, then said, "I just don't think that's very Christian of you, especially during the holidays." There it was, the guilt trip, the family classic. Make me the villain while twisting the truth. Over the next few days, I got messages from cousins I hadn't talked to in years. 3 of them. 2 acted casual. 1 sent a sarcastic Bible quote. Even Martha, who hadn't been involved for 2 Thanksgivings, left a voice message. "Ethan, don't hurt your poor mother like this. You'd think I'd be mad." But instead of anger, I felt clear, like a fog lifted and everything made sense. This was the game, the emotional scam. My mom was the ringleader, spinning her version of reality to everyone else. And I was done playing. I stopped replying to texts. Went to work. Came home. Took notes. Waited. The 30 days ticked down. The house got colder, both in mood and temperature. Linda forgot to use the heat. Jake slammed doors. Mark sulked. The whole place was thick with tension. I kept to myself, locked my door, made my own meals, waited. 3 days before the deadline, I posted on Facebook, calm, direct, just the facts. No name-calling, no drama. "Hi everyone, I want to clear up some rumors. Years ago, I agreed to live with my mother, stepfather, and brother. I paid the full down payment on the home and have covered 95% of the costs since. Despite trying to create shared responsibility, I've been met with manipulation and silent mistreatment. After being excluded from family events in my own home and seeing my boundaries disrespected, I made the legal choice to ask them to move out. This wasn't revenge, it's about protecting my peace. I wish them well, but I won't sacrifice my sanity to protect anyone else's version of family." That post didn't just stop the guilt trips, it shut them down. A few tried to keep the drama alive, but most backed off once I showed proof, messages, emails, pictures of broken things. I didn't insult anyone or reveal everything. The truth spoke for itself. When the day came to move out, I didn't smile or gloat. I said nothing. A friend brought his pickup, and I packed their things, the few things worth taking, into boxes on my own. I kept it peaceful. Jake shouted something about me betraying the family, but I didn't respond. Mark looked down, silent. Linda stared, stunned, as if she thought I'd back down at the last second. But I didn't. They left midday. No goodbyes, no hugs, just the crunch of their tires fading down the driveway. When they were gone, I locked the door and stood there. The silence was different. No banging upstairs, no noise, no guilt or drama, just me. For the first time in years, I felt something real, quiet that felt good. In the weeks that followed, I deep cleaned the house, painted the walls, changed the locks, turned my office back into a workspace, and made the extra room into a music space like I'd always wanted. I even put up Christmas decorations again, because I wanted to. I invited friends over for the first time in years. We played board games, watched silly movies on the backyard projector, and laughed more in a month than I had in years. I finally slept well, better than I had in a decade. Sometimes, I still get messages from family trying to fix things. I ignore them. I'm not holding a grudge. I'm not angry. I'm just done. Because real revenge isn't about anger. It's choosing a better life, drawing a line, picking peace instead of pretending. That's how you win. So when she said, "We're not doing Christmas with you this year," I calmly replied, "That's fine. I'm celebrating in my own way, with real joy, real music, and people who actually care. No bitter glances. No fake smiles."